Welcome to Illini Central on STL Sports Center. This is Mike Cagley with Jonathan Kerr, Brad Sturdy. It's also I on the Illini Live. Hey, let's talk about this second half really quickly here. The Illini end up winning this one 38-0, 358 yards to 204. 196 yards passing to 91, 162 yards rushing to 113. Quite a turnaround by Illinois. I thought the defense locked things down, and the Illini have turned into quite the third quarter bullies. Jonathan, what did you think they did differently to adjust for some of the problems that were going on in the first half?
Not as smart as a lot of people think that I'm not. But I will say this, just like with Duke, when you went into halftime, things seemed very precarious. Just like tonight, they came out, and it looks like they basically eliminated what basically Western Michigan had the opportunity to try doing in the first half. So from that standpoint, going forward, I think the team is very well coached up, and I think a lot of great. I'm not being echoed, by the way.
You're getting a little bit of that.
Okay, I'm not sure if I can control that. But I think the biggest thing in the last two games, they make very good adjustments at covering up a lot of the deficiencies. It looks like they kind of kept things simple. Western Michigan teams kind of sinking to kind of a normal of a pass rush. But from that standpoint, I thought it worked well. I think they got some work to do based on the first half. I think the first half is giving Indiana a lot of momentum in terms of game planning. So we'll wait and see, right? A week from now,
Yeah, I think we're really going to see an interesting matchup next week as we look at the two teams. Indiana has literally played high school level competition. Illinois has beat what I think is an impressive Duke team, and then has rolled over some teams they're supposed to roll over. Brad, is this a different world when Illinois plays two games that are relatively blasé and they blow the doors off of teams that admittedly aren't as good, but this is kind of what we've wanted Illinois to do for decades, is actually blow teams out they were supposed to.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, they took care of business. You know, what are they? These two games are 90-3 in the two games. I mean, that's what you want to do against Western Illinois and Western Michigan. Now, next week's a different animal. I do believe that Indiana is going to be a tough test. It's going to be a raucous environment. It's going to be a tougher road game than Duke was. So I don't think they can afford to have a first half again like they have the last 2 weeks. I think they're going to have to come out and be better. But I thought in the second half they were really good when you look at total yards, like 232 to 71 or something like that. So I think when that happens, that's the kind of thing that you are, that shows that they have the ability, that they're able to wear teams down. And I think they can do that against Indiana too. But I do feel like maybe I think that they need to just be more physical. I thought, they got Caden Fagan out, the couple of tosses, and he's able to get going downhill. I also think sometimes when he gets going downhill, but it seems like when he's in delay and doing that kind of, I don't know how you would say it, but like you delay or hesitation plays, he's not hitting the hole hard, and that's not his strength. Now Valentine, he's more shifty, so he's able to, he's more explosive on that first step, I think, and so that's why he's able to be maybe a little better sometimes in those roles. But I don't know, that's something they got to figure out. Especially moving forward against teams like USC and Indiana and Ohio State and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think the other thing that is interesting is Valentine's a little bit of a spark plug at the same time, because he is actually out there, and he hits people, he gets excited, he makes things happen. I found that to be kind of a refreshing thing, and you don't really expect that coming from a running back. You expect that, that type of, or at least not a guy his size and his speed. Jonathan, any thoughts that came through your mind as we were watching Illinois really in that third quarter pretty much take total control of the game?
Well, like I said a minute ago, I get the impression that Illinois coaching staff makes a pretty good adjustment. And when you're playing in a team that's physically inferior to you, once you kind of make the first chess match, which in college usually takes a quarter, not 2 quarters. Come the third quarter, I think they realized what was going to work and what wasn't. What I would like to see going forward, I look back at some of the Georgia Tech, and I think Clemson, or I'm sorry, I think Georgia Tech ran kind of a power O with the offense, with the quarterback. They may have ran that play about 20 yards or 20 different times. A lot of times, if you originate movement off the line of scrimmage, a lot of times your down blocks and pulling around can create leverage, create openings. I haven't seen a whole lot of that from Illinois, so I'd be curious to see if they may try implementing something like that against Indiana. Definitely need to show a wrinkle up front. So let's see if that's something that they do to create movement, leverage, and bigger hole in the running game.
Yeah, Brad, I thought that Luke Altmaier, obviously he got better protection in the second half, but I think they took some of the suggestions you guys were talking about, rolled him out a little bit, and he responded pretty well to that. I thought he was much more accurate. In fact, when he got up to 11 in a row, I thought his streak was stopped pretty much by a drop as opposed to an errant pass.
Yeah, yeah, they played faster too. You notice they didn't sub on the first scoring drive. There's 5 plays, 53 yards. Didn't sub. Same guys on the field, and I think that was just a change of pace, and I think that was good. And Luke responded. I think the receivers responded, and I think that's another adjustment. It allowed them to not maybe it wore them down. I think it wears them out. The defensive line could not get as much pressure then, but so I think that was good. The one thing I also thought that they took they looked down the field a little bit. You saw that throw. There was one to, I believe there was one to Beatty and one to who was the other one? But they're kind of trying to stretch the defense a little bit, get down, and I think that opened up, and then you can go under. So then you can do the dump downs, and you're gaining 10 yards or whatever it is. So, and then it also opened up some running lanes. And so I was really, I thought in the second half Barry Lenny did a good job in the second half. He just needs to do that in the first half. I think Luke is. I think Luke kind of likes to be in control when he's out there. I mean, he has good command of the offense, good command of what's going on. I think he likes when he keeps those guys and he can just play fast. I think that fits what he wants to do, and it makes the reads a little bit easier sometimes too, because there's not a change in personnel all the time.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. One of the things that I wanted to say too is you're looking at this particular podcast. Of course, this is brought to you by DraftKings. DraftKings Sportsbook is America's top-rated sportsbook app, and it's coming soon to the Show Me State, and you can sign up today. So our Missouri fans who enjoy the Fighting Illini can get $300 in bonus bets when they launch on December 1st. And all you have to do is download now, place a $5 bet when we go live, and DraftKings Sportsbook brings everything that you need to elevate your game day. In-game live betting, lightning fast payouts, and endless ways to get in on the action, all right from your phone. And when they officially go live in Missouri, you'll be betting with the Sportsbook app trusted by millions. Safe, secure, and has fast money withdrawals. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code STL Sports to grab $300 in bonus bets with just a $5 bet when we go live on December 1st. That's code STL Sports in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, 21 plus, physically present in Missouri. Eligibility restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Excludes customers who redeem pre-launch sign-up offer. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos. So, folks, you got your opportunity to DraftKings. Let's take advantage of it. When we look at what is going on in terms of Illinois being prepared Brad, did you see anything in the running game and the offensive game that makes you feel like they're ready for the Hoosiers next week?
The one thing I think, and I think Jonathan kind of hinted at this too, that it's very vanilla. They didn't do anything. They're not doing anything special right now because they don't need to do anything special. And so I think it's just like this is what we're going to do. We're line up. We're going to smash it and see what happens. And I think that's kind of what they did. And against Indiana, I think you'll see maybe some more misdirection, maybe some more. They ran a couple quarterback bootlegs, which seemed to be very effective. With teams are really crowding to that running back, and Luke's able to get, even if he gets 5 or 6 yards, it's really effective at kind of slowing down that guy's collapsing on the ends. So little things like that. So I think we'll see that. The one thing I feel like the offensive line, though, I think they got to let those big guys eat a little bit, let them push, right? Let them go forward, let them drive a little bit early in that game, because I think in the second half you see them, they get more push, they get more drive. But I feel like sometimes in the first half it's a lot of delays, and they're trying to find holes, this and that, whatever. So I don't know, just kind of my thoughts there.
Yeah, Jonathan, any thoughts in terms of that? You're watching this from a little bit different view. Are we seeing a team that you think is prepared now after not perfect games, but still, the funny thing is we're sitting at 3-0, the Illini are, and one can say that they played well, but they haven't played well for a whole game.
That's very well said. And I'm hoping you're not seeing 2 or 3 in me at this point. I'm hoping
we're good. We're good.
Okay. Yeah, bottom line, you got to look at the positives. We are 3-0. I think we played a stronger schedule than Indiana has at this point. Typically, this kind of goes back to even training camps. Different defenses are usually a lot more ahead of offenses, even when it comes to the beginning of the year versus middle and late of the year. I think offenses take a longer time to just adjust and adapt. That's going to continue to be my worry or my concern with what they can do up front. I think it's correctable at this point. Injuries obviously will play a big part, but the big thing I want to see is, when you see Luke Altmaier take a big hit, I don't know about you guys, but it almost seems like you hold your breath every time he does take a big hit. So I think if we can eliminate the exposing him from a standpoint like that, screw up a lot of the communication up front. I mean, Illinois has a chance to do some great things this year, and like I said, the biggest. I think we're going to find out a lot about this team a week from tonight, and so I think we just kind of take it from there and wait and see.
Yeah, Brad, probably.
Jonathan, I got to ask you a question. Luke Altmaier, you talked about taking hits. I hear that he can't actually slide. Like, he's really bad at sliding. So that's interesting. I think that's something they need to practice. Maybe it's maybe go out to the baseball field and take some slides. I don't know, because definitely struggles with that. He takes too many, even on the out of bounds there, he took that hard hit. He's running. I mean, you're just thinking, just go down. So
we saw that against Western Illinois, and it was just like, boy, I think I made the reference. If it's 4th and 3 and Luke's got to go into the fire against an Ohio State defensive line, okay, that's one thing, but my goodness, pick your battles. And hopefully the coaching staff will get through to him. I guess we'll have to find out and see.
Yeah, Brad's going to get tired of this, but he had to listen to all last year me whining every time that Luke didn't get out of bounds or slide when nobody was near him. I'm a big believer in that quarterback is gold, and you don't want him touched. I don't want him spindled, mutilated, anything. So we wanted.
Hey, here's the thing: Mike would have whined about something else. If he wasn't whining about that, he would have whined about something else. So
I would have whined about, Brad?
For the course.
Yeah, what I would have whined about is if you take a look at when you're on the internet, Delete Me makes it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everybody vulnerable. What do data brokers do? Where they take your name, your contact information, your social security number, home address, Even information about your family members could be compiled by these data brokers and sold online. So, as somebody who has an active online presence, it's really important to me to make sure that I'm not one of those people who is a victim of identity theft or harassment or doxing. If it hasn't happened to you or it hasn't happened to me, probably all of us know someone who has had it happen to them, and Delete Me can help. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount to our listeners. Today, get 20% off your Delete Me plan by texting HIT to 64000. The only way to get 20% off is to text HIT to 64000. That's HIT to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. All right, so wanted to make sure you guys are aware of that, because I would complain about that if that happened to me. The other thing and I'm going to ask both of you guys this, is Aaron Henry a little bit underrated for how this defense has been playing? Now, again, I realize that 2 out of the 3 teams weren't highly regarded, but they really held down a Duke team that won 9 games last year. I look at the performance of this Illini defense, and man, they are in the right place at the right time most of the time. Brad, what are your thoughts on Aaron Henry and what he's doing with the defense?
Well, I think he's doing a good job. I think the hard thing though is, ask me about this in 2 weeks after they played Indiana and USC, because although Duke does have had an explosive offense, we've seen them struggle a little bit even tonight against Tulane. But I would say this: I feel like they've done what they were supposed to do. They were good enough. They were solid against Duke, who's a quality opponent, and they've been fantastic against Western Michigan and Western Illinois. Yeah, and so that's what they're supposed to do. So they've done what they're supposed to do. So I think he deserves a good grade for that. I think next week's going to be the big, and USC will be big tests to kind of see where they're at, how they've developed. I really like their back end. They've got some NFL guys, Matthew Bailey, Miles Scott. They've got some NFL guys, and then they've got the front 7. Gabe Akas is obviously an NFL guy too. So a lot of guys have a chance to play in that 3-letter league, and we'll see how it comes out. But if the other guys, I do think the other thing about tonight was they had so many guys sitting out. That does hurt them. They're playing a lot of second string guys and guys that, which does make difference. So now you're going to be pretty much healthy. I think Clark might be the only guy really out next week. Hopefully Scott's injury, he had a little tweaked his ankle there at the end of making that pass breakup. So if he's good to go, then I'll pretty much should have everyone ready to go next week.
Jonathan, what were your thoughts on just watching the overall performance of this defense over 3 weeks now?
I think on the perimeter, this team plays with the speed that is different than in a lot of years watching Illinois football. I think with Gabe, I don't know if you have a second player who can create havoc up front, but at the same time, he should be somebody who should be able to take up 2 players from a game plan standpoint. That part of it, I think, is very encouraging. They don't appear to have a lot of deficiencies up front, but I think their speed on the outside and in the secondary, I think is very positive. So with that said, injuries are going to play a key, whether you have them or whether you don't. But like I said, let's hope that we can keep everybody upright as much as possible and go from there, right?
Yeah, that's definitely the way to look at it. We saw Hank Beatty get free a couple times today. They really didn't do that much special. Ashton Hollins came out, played well. I thought Hudson Clement did well. What were your thoughts overall on the wide receivers for the game tonight, Brad?
I agree. I was looking at an interesting stat. Hank Beatty has 20 targets and 19 catches this year. I think that's good. He's throwing the ball like more than maybe. But no, I thought Ashton Hollins really stepped up with Justin Bowick, out. I thought Malik Elzy had a really nice catch too. And Ashton Hollins with he catches those 2 plays almost back to back for the touchdown. I think that was good to see that from him. Shows what he can do. Hudson Clement had a couple. The one-handed catch was really nice.
Yeah.
The ball's a little bit behind him, goes back and makes the adjustment. He actually had one where I think he had that diving catch where it did bounce, but it was really a nice effort to try and make that catch. I don't know what else he could have done, but I think they're getting more comfortable. They're getting better at the wide receiver position now. Outside, obviously, we know what Hank's done, but it's the other guys that as they step up and get better and better. I think that's really cool. To see them kind of take that next step.
Yeah, I thought so as well. Jonathan, when you looked at the line play in the second half, did any of the players stand out to you? Was there anything that you saw that maybe one of us just normal people haven't had to make a living in those trenches might not notice, or anything jump out like that for you?
I thought they settled down to a certain degree. I thought they were able to, once they got the passing game opened up, I think it kind of opened up the running game to a certain degree. I think they utilized the leverage in a lot of ways with the running game, not necessarily from a coming off the ball standpoint, but I thought it was a little bit more controlled in terms of how they were able to kind of hold their own with their opponent. That part of it, a lot of the things in the first half seemed like, going back to the Duke first half, seemed like kind of like a jailbreak, right? And then second half, you're watching the game and you're like, well, what has changed? Well, I think the biggest thing that's changed is that, again, I think you have a very smart coaching staff on our side that will be the ones that can make the difference. But I think they utilized the passing game in a certain degree to open up the running game. And then once they kind of did that, I think it eliminated a lot of what Western Michigan was going to try doing in terms of run stunts, because I think they probably figured that Illinois was going to try to come out running the ball a lot, which I think we looked at and we said, yeah, they did. And I think Illinois, they got kind of backed up in that degree. So I think once they opened up the passing game in the second half, I think it made the defense kind of play more true. Again, I think you're going to have to wait and see what Indiana's defense is going to do. I think they've had 2 games to scout Illinois and kind of get some ammunition in terms of trying to create chaos. But let's hope the third time's a charm in the first half anyway.
So I'm going to ask both of you guys a kind of a loaded question here. But as I watch this Illinois team, it seems like this is an Illinois team that's more comfortable setting up the run by throwing. Have we turned into the San Francisco 49ers all of a sudden here?
I don't disagree with you. I think they've been better, but I think some of it is it's what you're given. What the defense gives you and takes away. They're really trying to. Brett's always talked about running the football. We got to control the line of scrimmage, which I agree with. But when they put 8 or 9 guys up there, it's difficult to do that, and especially when they're playing very vanilla, very predictable. As you see I think as you see this moving forward, the one thing they need to do is kind of maybe use some. I think play action. They haven't done a ton of play action. I think play action can be effective when teams are stacking that way and sending that safety up. So, and then get over the top, get some seam routes or even crossing routes. Sometimes deep crosses. Like I think they're there, especially when they're doing that. So I think it'll be interesting to see how they adjust against Indiana. See what Indiana does. A lot of teams been running some kind of different blitz packages. Duke ran a few. We saw it in Western Michigan tonight with some different blitz packages. So how do they handle those, and maybe that'll affect the way they attack against Indiana or USC or whoever.
Yeah. What did you think, Jonathan?
Oh, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe, is it this year or maybe even last year was the first year that the quarterback and the offensive coordinator were able to communicate via their helmet up until 15 seconds in the play count? Is that, or am I misinterpreting that?
Yeah, I think that was it. Brad, you went cold on us.
I believe that's right. Second year, I think they've been able to.
Yeah.
There were, I think that the more you watch football, especially from an NFL standpoint, you see this perfected a lot more, where teams can audible a lot more easily. And again, you're talking about the best of the best, and you're talking about older players and things of that sort. There were some plays that definitely, Luke, it would have been nice for them to be able to have the chance to audible out of, because they simply didn't have, in my opinion, the right personnel to block against them. Are you still hearing me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
I can't see you, but as long as you can see me, I guess we're okay. So as long as, I would hope and expect, with Coach Looney and Altmaier being in year 3, my goal is to see them be able to find a way to check out of some of these different fronts, as they, in my opinion, they're gonna know that a lot of these defenses are going to bring a lot of crazy looks to them, and at some point there's only so many different crazy looks. So hopefully the fact that they're seeing all this chaos at this point, hopefully it will allow them to hunker down and find ways to maybe audible out of them better than they have in the first half of the last 2 games, for sure.
Yeah, it seems like it's been a little bit crazy, and you expect a little bit more consistency out of the offense, especially one that's as experienced as the line for Illinois. The other thing I thought was interesting tonight is I thought Crimmins had a nice job on a few of the punts. I think we kind of take that for granted as Illini fans. We've had pretty reasonable punting, but boy, when he needs to get a hold of one, he was sending them flying and making the receiver, the punt returner, go backwards. I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that, Brad.
We were actually, Matt Stevens and I were sitting there, and we were talking about that up here in the press box. They hit a couple nice punts, because I had said I thought he was, early on the season, I thought he shanked a couple and just wasn't looking like he should have been, because he's supposed to, he's a really good punter. Just kind of got a slow start, but now I thought tonight he had some really nice kicks, and even the ones that weren't as long, there was no return. So if you get 42 yards, there's no return. Even though the average may not be as high, it's still a really effective thing there. So yeah, so I thought he was good tonight, and that's it's good to see. I mean, as we guys get comfortable and things go through this, I think this is really good to build up to the next game, where it's Indiana and then USC, et cetera, et cetera. So can't have any kind of mistakes if you're going to beat the Hoosiers over there in Bloomington next week.
Yeah, totally agree. A couple things that were interesting, because the first half the stats were so close. Illinois totally one-sided the second half. Ended up with an advantage 20-12 in first downs. Illinois was 7 for 12 on third down and held Indiana. I'm hoping it's Indiana next week. Held Western Michigan to 3 for 14 on third down. And basically, the total plays, Illinois was looking at 63 to 58, but the yards per play was 5.7 for Illinois, 3.5 for Western Michigan. And you saw that Illinois was 6 for 6 in the red zone. So what we saw last week was Illinois was very effective when they had the opportunity to score. Jonathan, is there anything different about when you get the ball in the red zone for an offensive lineman? Is there a different mindset? Does the defense play different when they have less of the field to defend?
Well, to a certain degree, the field shrinks, right? So, I mean, there's it limits the offense to a certain degree. I think to a larger degree, it kind of brings into a mentality that when you're in that red zone, that you have a better confidence about whatever it is play that you're running. One thing I wanted to kind of touch out that might not quite answer everything that you were saying about Beatty. Beatty is a player that I think over time teams are going to try to focus on, because he's obviously the number one. I think Beatty by the end of the year is going to have the name recognition of former players in the past who just always people can think about and remember, like a Michael Dudek, even though his career was cut really short.
Yep.
The big thing with Beatty is if they can find a secondary player to piggyback on his route running, his ability to catch the ball. And I mean, you look at Beatty, he's almost to the point when you watch him catch a ball as a punt, you'd be shocked if he ever dropped it. I think if we can find an understudy, if you want to use that word, who can really develop into a really solid number two, Beatty, like I said, Beatty's stats right now are off the charts, but I think if Illinois can find a way to complement him, you might find defenses finding a way to back up once they realize there's a secondary threat in the receiving core.
Yeah, I've been kind of surprising, but Colin Dixon has played well. He blocks fantastic. Just hasn't been able to get as many open looks out there, and certainly Hudson Clement was really impressive. You can tell, like I said, Brandon is listening and watching on YouTube, but Hudson Clement with that catch was excellent, and he Hudson and Beatty kind of remind me of one another, two types of bulldogs there on either side of the field if you had them both out there at the same time. And I'm going to say that if Illinois has to use the passing game to open up things for them, I think you're going to see more and more of these wide receivers starting to put together some impressive stats. Brad?
Yeah, I agree with that. One thing I want to comment on over here, people are always talking about what would this team have done, what that team have done. I mean, in Indiana winning 73-0, and they're mentioning that stuff. The first 2 weeks, Indiana, like against Kennesaw State, was like 21-6, and then you look at Penn State today was 13-0 with a minute to go in the first half against Villanova, and they're ranked second in the country. I mean, you're gonna have days. I mean, Texas won 27-10 today over UTEP. You're not gonna be like it's not easy, and so.
Yes.
I think that's the hard thing. Like, it's hard to be up every single time you come out to play a football game in this era where, especially when you're playing a team. Here's the thing: Western Michigan, Illinois could played like 10 quarters and they might have scored a touchdown. This was not a good offense, so they knew they didn't have to be great on offense, but so. The sense of urgency wasn't there. They came out in the second half. You saw that third quarter, 3 quarters, 3 drives, 3 touchdowns. They had a sense of urgency. They did a better job. So I think it's very difficult to say what would this team have done because everybody has those slow starts. That's why we have games that are closer than they should be, and that's part of it. So now they just got to but they're right in that you can't have a slow start against Indiana next Saturday.
Yeah. How does this team, what do you think this team needs now, Jonathan? Going into this game now, you're going to look at most likely Indiana will move into the top 20. Illinois, will be at least number 9. What do you think this team needs now that you've seen 3 games? Illinois can't control Indiana, but from the Illinois side, what do they need to do?
I hate to be Debbie Downer, and you can cue the old Saturday Night Live. Wah, wah.
Yeah.
And Brad, I know you have children that are playing sports and things like that. I think it goes down to grade school, high school, college, and professional. Teams play down to the level of competition. And the only coach I think may have nipped that in the bud, or the best coach who may ever have nipped that in the bud, is probably Nick Saban. Because there's just stories about how he would never let an inferior opponent, he would never let his team play down to them. To a certain degree, Illinois is not at that point where they are world beaters yet. So I would tell you, arguably, one of the biggest challenges that this coaching staff has, because let's assume Illinois stays at 9, or maybe they move up to 7 or 6, or if they win against Indiana, they're probably going to be a top 5 team. And there's noise getting in between the ears, right? I think anyone knows a lot of times your best way of kind of being able to reset and refocus is when you get humbled. I think all three of us would be very, very surprised if this team never lost a game this year. If they did, we would be talking about them having a first round bye into the playoffs. The part of me deep down is this team probably needs to get humbled in a way that's going to allow them to realize that, the old saying is you're never as good as it seems, you're never as bad as it seems. When was the last time Illinois was in the top 10? Was it 2001? Last time they were ranked number 5 was when I was a freshman in 1990. I mean, we got to start going way back into the record books. So the biggest thing I'm concerned about is them, and this is where the coaching staff is going to be able to really come in, I think, and it's going to be a hard task. As long as they keep winning, it's going to be hard for them to kind of, realize how good they can be versus how good they think they're going to be.
Yeah, it's interesting talking about that. One of the hardest things to do as a coach is to get your kid, because the kids aren't dumb. Like Illinois players aren't dumb. They know that Western Michigan's not on their level. It's very difficult to get them to understand that they still have to have the same attention to detail, the same sense of urgency. It's a difficult thing. That's one of the differences. That's the differentiator sometimes between the great coaches and the good coaches, is being able to do those things. So you're right. That's why probably Saban's probably GOAT in college football right now.
I'm sure Caleb DeBoer has never heard that.
No, he's wondering. He's right now going, Nick, can I get some advice? So, but no, it's so I think you're exactly right. You hope that maybe this kind of some of the stuff they've had to face, the adversity of not playing as well or whatever against Duke, that will help them. Indiana, but I find it hard to believe that they wouldn't come out with a different level of urgency against Indiana. I mean, I feel like, should. I mean, if they're competitors. Should. If they're competitors, they will. So I think that's very intriguing going forward to see how that works. But I think Brett Bielema is a really good football coach. So I think if there's a guy who can do it, I think he'll find a way.
Yeah.
And really quickly, sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think if this coaching staff truly figures out that the running game struggles at an early point in the system, and I think, Brad, you talked about it, a lot of times the passing game can set up the running game. And so, if they're realistic with how things are starting at the beginning of the game, like I said, a lot of times if you start opposite of what a lot of teams will think, it makes the running game go a whole lot more. So maybe that is a way for this team to start going about their game plan, at least offensively.
Yeah, and I just wonder, from a standpoint of this, is Indiana going to, Illinois talked about after playing Duke that it took them a bit to get used to the speed and size of Duke after playing Western Illinois. Is Indiana going to have, they practice against themselves, but are they going to have any challenges adapting when they play the Illini because they haven't played somebody anywhere near Illinois' level?
How many players have come back on Indiana's team from last year, or at least how many new players? I think it's a pretty large number, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Not many returners.
Not many returners, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, admittedly, I haven't seen a lot of Indiana. I don't think even if you watched film on Indiana last year, I don't know if it would do any good. Was it lightning in a bottle? It's hard to say. When you keep changing the roster to that degree, I don't know if you ever know what you have until you have it. And with you saying Indiana hasn't played anyone worth a darn, this should be, I think we're going to find out one way or the other what we have here at the end of next weekend, right?
Brad, any thoughts on that?
Well, I think he's spot on. I agree. I think that I don't know how you. Well, we say you can't simulate. You know what I mean? Like, because even in practice, you're playing against each other. It's not the same. So I don't know that you can simulate. So, but we'll see. This isn't Kurt Cignetti's a really good coach too. So this is going to be. It's going to be fun. I'm excited about this game. I know one of the things is you're going to have to play at a different level. I think Illinois got to play at a different level, like they did the second half against Duke, if they want to win this game. And if they do that, I think they got a great chance to win it. But if they don't, well, we're going to be 3-1, and then you better be USC.
Yeah, and USC looks
And
really.
we're talking about a night game, right? Next weekend, 6:30.
Yes. Yep. 6 p.m.
So, it's one thing about playing on the road at 11 a.m. where maybe half the students are still sleeping. Everybody's
Now
going to
they're
be frying.
inebriated. But you hope that they're passed out by 9. So at the end of the game, they're not around.
Yeah. Drink so early that you won't make it to the gates.
The big problem is, Jonathan, is they drink so early that they've recovered by 6.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That second wind you get in college, you're like, I'm feeling pretty good now.
Yeah, it makes you go back and go, wow, yeah, I was Superman back then. This will be a great test, not only from finding out who we are, who Indiana is, which I don't think anyone else knows, and you're going to be playing in front of a crazy environment. And if you thought Duke was in a crazy environment, appeared to be, it was still 11 o'clock game, and that place was, 70% full, maybe?
Yeah.
Indiana's going to be packed coming off of last season. We've talked about how this game is going to be the biggest, Illinois-Indiana game maybe ever?
I would say ever.
So I think it goes without question is that you have to find a way to not start the way you did tonight and the way you did against Duke. And if you can start decent or even average, which I don't think anyone can say that we've done at this point with the last 2 games, I like to think that we have the coaching staff to make it even better. So let's try not to make it too hard on ourselves. I really feel confident that our coaching staff makes very good second half, adjustments. So let's just, if that means passing more, setting up the run, great. But I think it goes without question. Saturday night, full house. We need to not.
It's just like it's just a common thing. We've got 2 highly ranked Indiana and Illinois teams playing football against each other, just as we all expected.
Exactly.
So it should be fun. But it's interesting. You talk about adjustments and different things. I wonder, and I did not watch much of the tape of the Western Michigan play. I'm not going to lie. I didn't watch a ton, but I watched a little bit. I thought they did a really nice job. I think they held Michigan State to 2 points in the second half.
Yes.
So I don't think this is I don't think that, the other thing is, I don't think this is a bad defense. I think they'll be a much better defense than maybe we thought. And so that's interesting as you look forward. Maybe did they do anything different? I don't even know. Maybe they came out with a different look and confused them, and I don't know. They have to adjust faster than halftime, obviously, but I do think that they made the necessary adjustments there at halftime. And like Jonathan mentioned, he's got a really good Barry Lenny's had 2 really, really good second halves and play calling and adjustments.
And let me say one thing based on that. Last year, if you remember, we started very strong in a lot of games. The Penn State game comes to mind, where we took the ball, scored a touchdown on the first drive, looked very crisp. I recall, I thought there was at least 1 or 2 other games that we came out, and kind of how it looks on the NFL, right? These NFL teams come out and they look like world beaters on the first drive, and then in the NFL they make adjustments and you're pretty much figured out by the 3rd drive, and then it's a cat and mouse game. But last year I would say we had a pretty good ability to start fast, and maybe we could still do that. We haven't played anyone yet, in my opinion, that has challenged us. But if we can get back to the standpoint of, especially last year, which there were a lot of components, right? Same offensive line, same quarterback, same offensive coordinator. You got Beatty, who's taken the place of Bryant. If we can find a secondary, you got a sledgehammer of a running back like Fagan. Let's see if we can start fast. That would be good.
Yeah. Well, I think people have to remember this is how I look at team sports as I've aged, but every season is really a journey, and you don't know if you're going to end up in a better place or a worse place than you started. But I do think that this is a pretty developmental coaching staff, and we usually see growth in players throughout the season. I really am hopeful that this team will be better by the end of the year. Of course, you have to be a little bit fortunate. You don't want to have injuries. And you have to have like I said, you have to have sometimes the ball bounces in a good fashion. You saw Purdue tonight scored a touchdown on a double pass play where USC thought the ball was incomplete, but it counted as a lateral, and off he went to the races. So that was kind of a crazy thing. Well, folks, we are pushing up now close to the
One thing I
Cardinals
do want
game.
to say, Mike, I want you to know that the winner of the Indiana Illinois game will please play Vanderbilt for the national title at the end of the year.
That would be just fantastic.
That's the way it's going to be. 3-0 with 20-plus point wins. First time since 20-plus point wins. First time since 1930 for Vanderbilt.
And
So
did they beat the vaunted South Carolina team?
they did badly. Yes. Sellers got hurt, so it obviously changes things.
Yes. So, folks, we are going to switch over to the Illini Guys channel as opposed to the STL Sports Central channel because the Cardinals coverage is coming up. And certainly, while the Illini are massive in Champaign and in the state of Illinois, the Cardinals are king down in St. Louis. So, we are going to get off of this channel and go over to our channel. So, if you want to just take a little bit of a 2-minute breather, we will be back on the other side, and we will be talking a little bit more as we are waiting on the man, the myth, the legend, Matt Stevens, to come up from the locker room and give us an idea of how the team and the players feel about it. So we will be back over on that one in about 2 minutes. See you then. Here we are, folks, back with Matt Stevens, who has made it up from the depths of the Geese Memorial Stadium locker room. Matt, what kind of locker room did you encounter there with the Illini after a sluggish first half, but another impressive second half?
Yeah, I think, again, a veteran group that knows we got some stuff to work on, and we got a week to work on them because we're going to go play a really good Indiana team. I think it was – Brett Bielema kind of said, I'm going to look at the glass half full part of this, which is I got mad. I think he's going to have to go over to Carl Clinic tonight and get his hand looked at because he said he hit the whiteboard in the room so hard that his hand's still numb. And they showed that, the players said, hey, we saw some fire from our head coach. It's not the most fire they've ever seen from him. We asked Caden Fagan that. He just kind of looked at everybody and went, no, that's not the most fire we've ever seen out of Brett Bielema. But I don't think anybody panicked, right? I think, again, I'm not sounding repetitive, but this group got in real quick, got a, tongue lashing from their head coach. And then the rest of the coaches kind of gathered everybody together and said, hey, what's working? Okay, let's do that. Let's try that. Let's try to do that more. And then boom, 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 3 straight possessions, you score touchdowns, and suddenly now you're in a game that's out of hand. And I feel like Illinois does a really good job of that. And now they got to figure out a way to go on the road against a really, really good team in Indiana and not give 2 quarters away, like Brett Bielema said. Because if they do that, they're probably going to lose. But you know this, Mike. You've dealt with this and you've watched this on several different sports with the Illini that we're dealing with 18 to 24-year-olds here. And you never know. I'm going to hear a lot of people go, well, if they play like that next week against Indiana, they're going to lose. They weren't playing Indiana like tonight. Yeah. And it isn't next week. And you never know between 18 and 24-year-olds what you're going to get from week to week. It's what makes this sport kind of interesting. And so I think that Illinois kind of sees some trends. But I also, again, we've talked about this, Mike, I don't think Barry Lunny goes for the throat in the first half. I really don't. And then and in the 15-play script, I really don't. We got to figure out.
Here's a question that we asked earlier. Then I want your point of view on this.
Sure.
Is this Illinois offense actually better when the pass sets up the run?
No, this Illinois offense is better when they don't huddle and they go with tempo right now, which doesn't necessarily mean you throw the football. It just means you don't sub.
Okay.
Like, that's what I'm writing tonight, is that Barry Lunny figured out, what if we just don't sub? What if we just don't huddle? Like, let's see if that works. I mean, that was literally probably the conversation with Luke Altmaier, was like, what if we just go tempo? Let's see if that works. And it did. And then you force Western Michigan or whoever's playing defense to stop you, and they couldn't. And at that point, now you have them on their heels. Luke Altmaier said that. It finally felt like in the second half, we have them on their heels for the first time. So, no, I don't think this needs to be a pass-heavy offense. I don't think it needs to be a pass-first offense. I don't think with the guy that's been doing this as a head coach this is his 17th year, you're going to have a pass-first offense, but you could have a tempo offense, right? Okay. And that means Caden Fagan just stays on the field, and you keep running with him, and the defense tries to get lined up to, tackle a 240-pound tailback when they have to get in their stance really, really quick. Instead of Illinois kind of huddling and Barry Lunny trying to figure out combinations of players and combinations of play calls that work, let's just call the same thing until they stop it. I know it sounds elementary, but sometimes it works. And I think that Illinois figured out that was working. I think last week they figured out, like, it's not about plays, it's about players. Let's just try to get Hank Beatty and Justin Bowick the football. Let's try to get Khalil Valentine on the perimeter. Let's try to get Caden Fagan up the middle. This is not about play calls. This is about players. So I don't think it was the same thing. But I think that, they went into halftime and was like, hey, we really haven't tried tempo all that much. Let's try that. And it worked. So kudos to the coaches for making some adjustments. But I guess Peyton Manning's wrong. I guess halftime adjustments do exist in football, and it isn't the biggest misnomer in the sport. I tended to think that it was. But Illinois figured out a way to kind of make very small adjustments seem very, very big over a 30-minute stretch.
Well, what does it tell us that this Illini team has scored 135 points, only given up 22, and they really haven't played a full game that Brett Bielema would be satisfied yet?
It kind of says that there's still things that they can talk about on Sunday and Monday, and that they're not perfect. And I don't think anybody thought through 3 games that they were going to be. And there are teaching moments that are going to happen on Sunday and Monday, and there has to be, right? I mean, this isn't a finished product, let alone a perfect product, but it's still pretty good. And I mean, I think that a lot of people from the defensive side, Mike, look, Aaron Henry does not care about yards. You can get as many yards on Aaron Henry as you want. He pitched a shutout tonight. I'm sorry, but like, Aaron Henry goes to bed and his head hits the pillow tonight, knowing that for the most part, his defense did the right thing, because scoreboard, like, you didn't score. Like, I had a bunch of people texting me at halftime, Mike, I swear to God, going, I really hope Illinois hangs on. I'm like, hang on? Like, in order for Illinois to not hang on, Western Michigan has to score. I'm sorry, but like, and then I had a lot of people going like, well, what if they score on this like goal line thing? And I'm like, does that give them 11 points? Like, I know it would have been a big bummer going into half, but like, Illinois still would have had the lead. And I short of that drive and the drive before it, that I never felt like Western Michigan was putting drives. There was the drive before it that ended in the missed field goal. And then there was a drive that ended in the goal line stand at halftime. Those were the only two drives that I felt like Western Michigan was really putting anything together to move the football. And if they're not going to score, guess what? I hate to say it this way because it sounds kind of like, duh, but like, Barry Lunny can work on some stuff if he knows that Western Michigan isn't going to score, right? I mean, we can try to figure out what's going to work and what's not for the future. Like, we can try some stuff in the second half, and it's not really a big deal. Doesn't have really big ramifications. So I feel like Illinois is doing that. I don't think they did that last week against Duke. I think they knew they had to get some stuff. They had to get the ball to certain people that they weren't getting the ball to, and they had to basically try to block it up a little bit better, knowing that Duke was probably still going to get some points on the board. But I think in their 2 games at home, I don't think anybody had any reservations to think that Western Illinois and Western Michigan were going to score a whole bunch of points.
I agree. I
mean, you hear Luke Altmaier talk about, that defense from Western Michigan. It's not terrible. Not only is it not terrible, I think it's going to be highly competitive in the MAC.
I mean, they certainly gave Michigan State problems. I mean, clearly.
Outscored them 6-2 in the last 30 minutes of that ball game in week 1 in East Lansing. So you're absolutely right. And I go back to it all the time, Mike. I think people hate when I say this, but there are two teams on the field, and if both of them don't stink, Illinois is not going to dominate every play. But they did have some things work in the second half that I think gives them a lot of confidence. And most importantly, if we're going to go back to offense, I think number 3, Caden Fagan, comes out of this with a little bit more confidence and in what he's doing, how he's operating and how he's running the football. Getting 100 yards and getting in the way he did it in the second half, I got news for everybody. That is how Brett Bielema is going to want to close out games and against good teams. And I think they still have some things to work on in order to do that against defenses like Indiana, like Southern Cal, like an Ohio State. But I think that's going to be the game plan. Is when we have the game by the throat, we're going to hand the ball to 3 when he's healthy, and I think he will be very soon. We're going to hand the ball to 21, Aiden Laughley, and then we're going to hand the ball to number 5, Khalil Valentine, because I think Brett said on radio tonight that he said he found some things and saw some things growth-wise out of Khalil Valentine again.
Sir, he really makes a difference when he's out there.
Sure, and I think there's a reason why he's the third tailback, Mike. I'll say that. But I think as the third tailback, he has a role, and he does it the last 2 weeks, he's done it very, very well. And I think that paired with somebody like Caden Fagan and then paired with somebody like a healthy Aiden Laughley, I think that this team feels like we're working toward being able to close games out. Because what they've done running the football in the fourth quarter in these last 2 weeks is actually physically pretty impressive.
What about
go ahead.
Did you talked about this in the pregame, but did a few players not play because Illinois was concerned about, not losing anybody they've got a tough field ahead when you talk about in the next month, you're going to end up playing USC, and then after USC, or Indiana, USC, Ohio State, Washington, with a Purdue sandwiched in there. So are you saying most of these were just in case type of situation?
Okay, let's go to the pregame. I think if this was a Big Ten opponent, I think Aiden Laughley and I think Dylan Rosiak play. If that's
right.
When we talk about the pregame inactive list, those two guys, I don't know about Daniel Brown, but I'm pretty sure Aiden Laughley would have tried to go. I think Brett Bielema said it was a late week decision, but why? Right? Like, I think Brett Bielema kind of was like, sure, I could play Aiden, but why? I could play Dylan Rosiak, but why? And then I think you could translate that also, Mike, into what we saw in the game. I think Justin Bowick, he never took his pads off. He never took his helmet away. But he didn't play after, I think he rolled his ankle or something. And Brett said that he was out for the rest of the game. I think on radio, or they said something on radio that he was probably out for the rest of the game. He probably could have gone back in. Bielema said he didn't know about Bowick. He seemed very, very encouraged about Xavier Scott.
Yeah.
So that's good news. But a lot of the guys that I thought got hurt, you saw Tamawa Durje get hurt. But why put him back in the game? Yep. I think a lot of the guys in the game could have gone back in the game after they got hurt. But why? I think you kind of said it the best, Mike. I think Brett Bielema and his staff understand what they have coming to them over the next month and why. What's the reasoning? To be truthful, I had no earthly idea why Luke Altmaier and a lot of first-team offensive guys were out there as long as they were.
TV asked Robert Smith, the former Ohio State tailback, was asking the same question.
And I'm like, wow, you're Barry, you're teasing fate here, man. But it worked out, and I think Illinois is going to be healthy going to Bloomington, as healthy as they have been. I don't know about Daniel Brown. I think that's pretty significant because they probably need an extra pass rusher. But I think, and I don't know about Juice Clark, who has not played. And I kind of thought that they were screwing around with him in the sense of just being really cautious. Now I'm kind of wondering if this is a long-term thing. And you can kind of see if you put Juice in with that defensive backfield, now you're cooking with gas, especially with what you're doing at safety and what Xavier Scott is providing you. You can really cook with gas on that. But I don't know about that, but I do know that I think they feel good about Aiden Laughley. They feel good about Dylan Rosiak. They feel good about Xavier Scott. And so, I think they're being cautious, but I think tonight was about try to get out of here as healthy as we can before we go to Bloomington, and I think that's smart.
Yeah, because I would say with Matthew Bailey, I see 3 letters all over him. It's called NFL.
It's amazing too, right? When he had to have 2 tryouts to actually make the Illinois roster because his first tryout didn't really go all that well. Like,
Yeah.
His next tryout might be the NFL Combine, and he might be really good.
Yeah. Oh my goodness gracious. Yes, that's good. So as we look forward to this next week, what most intrigues you about this matchup coming up? Because you're obviously your job is to be there amongst the troops every day.
Yeah.
Anything that because I think Signetti's a heck of a coach. I also think Brett Bielema is a heck of a coach who's underrated by a lot of people.
Sure.
I think this is a pretty good matchup. And I do think the people there, this is not hyperbole, folks. This is probably in the 115 years that they've played each other. This is probably the most important and biggest matchup ever between Illinois and Indiana in football. I didn't say basketball.
I don't see how it couldn't be. Like, you know what I mean?
I
Like,
agree.
I don't see how it couldn't be. NBC thinks it is because they put it on Big Ten Saturday night.
Yep.
And here's what I think, Mike, and you tell me that I'm wrong, but like, if you know anything right now about Indiana, good for you, because I don't. I have no earthly idea whether or not Indiana's good or not. I don't know how Kirk Cignetti knows if Indiana is any good or not. I think Brett Bielema knows if his team's pretty good or not, based on the 3 games that they've played and the 3 opponents that they've played. And I think that Brett Bielema knows that. I think it's going to sound like no duh, Stevens, but like, I think the team that makes the least amount of mistakes, not the team that makes the most plays, but the team that makes the least amount of mistakes in Bloomington is going to win that football game. Right. And I don't think Indiana has been tested about game management. I don't think they've been tested in terms of big, like, third down situations. I don't think they've been tested in any of those types of things that really kind of make you break, or at least give you pause, or I just don't know what kind of adversity Indiana's gone through in these first three weeks that they've played. I don't. I know what this Illinois team's gone through. I know what they went through tonight through 30 minutes and adversity-wise. And I know that Illinois has figured out what they have to fix before they go to Bloomington, before this game, a heck of a lot more than Indiana has. I do know that. So either Indiana's really, really good, and I think that quarterback, you want to talk about NFL, I think that quarterback could draw some interest in the 3-letter league too. Okay, and I think that's something. It's not something Illinois hasn't seen, because Mensa is a really elite talent as well.
And they practiced against Luke Altmaier,
correct,
who is a good quarterback.
Correct. And so I think it's a pretty good quarterback matchup. I think it's a pretty good defensive matchup. I think Indiana's defense is better than it was last year, believe it or not, because I think that they lost a lot of those James Madison guys on defense, but I think that they're pretty good on defense again. I think they're pretty salty on that side of the ball. But I think that Illinois feels good about a lot of things. I think up front on defense, Illinois is a lot better than they were last year. I do. I really, really do. And I think that could cause Indiana some problems. And I do think that, it's funny how the last time Illinois went to Bloomington, Illinois kind of gave the game away. They turned it over 4 times, and they lose by less than a touchdown. They lose on the last drive to an Indiana team that we found out wasn't really that great. But on a weird Friday night, I think this game could go the same way. I think Illinois goes into this game knowing, this is a big game, but we already have shown some things that we can correct before we ever get to that place. And I don't know if Indiana on tape can put things on tape right now that go, hey, we got to fix that. We know that that's a problem. We know that we've got to get that fixed. Both of these coordinators at Illinois have already seen adversity to the point where they go, okay, let's get that fixed. And we can, because we have enough talent. So, no, I think it's going to be a great game. I would imagine the people in the desert can't have that game, the line on that game being more than 3. I can't either way. And you're talking about one of these teams that comes out of Bloomington with the W is going to have a stranglehold on one of those, I think, Big Ten college football playoff spots, before we ever hit October. And that's if everything goes right for them throughout the year.
I think the schedules are so tough. Even with Illinois, people go, oh, it's the 17th hardest schedule in the Big Ten. Well, that still makes it about 40th in the country. And when you look at, I'm not certain if I would say it's a CFP elimination, because you've got a huge, Illinois still has to play. They would still have to play, USC, Ohio State, and Washington, and then no upsets, including a away game up in Madison, which I don't care what the record is the last 30 years. Getting a win in Madison isn't easy.
Sure.
You can just ask Alabama about that. But to
As
me,
ask the head coach in Champaign-Urbana, about that.
Yeah. So we're gonna get close to wrapping this one up because we have we got Canelo Crawford coming up, and I still have to do some editing here. But any final thoughts that you have on this? And it was also beautiful to watch Notre Dame lose to fall to 0-2. So Illinois may be number 8 next week as they go into this game against Indiana.
As a devout Catholic, Mike, I do not have the hatred for Notre Dame that you have. Just want to point that out. Let's see. I think that Illinois, look, the first half is going to be the first halves of Illinois this year is going to be the talking point. And I think it's going to be the talking point throughout the entire week that we head into this week, the Indiana week. I think Illinois has got to figure out what they've got to flip in the first 30 minutes in order to stay competitive against a really, really good Indiana team. I think they need to get Luke Altmaier back on track. I think one of the ways to do that is what you saw in the second half, which is tempo, don't sub, kind of do the same kind of thing that he was doing at Ole Miss, and he felt with Jeff Lebby, and he was doing really comfortable things. And when you see wild Luke kind of out there, sometimes you see better Luke. I feel like Illinois takes away this game, takes a lot out of this game, good and bad. I think I think Caden Fagan found confidence. I can't tell you how much that means going into a game like Indiana, because he's going to get the football a lot. And I think that Illinois, from a defensive perspective, especially up front in their front seven, feels pretty good about what they have. I'm really impressed with the fact that they've been able to lose Dylan Rosiak for the better part of 2 games. And that middle linebacker room is really, really good. Like, we talked to KO tonight. He played really well, especially on that goal line stand. But guys like Malachi Hood, guys like Luke Zarjan, guys like JoJo Hayden, they're coming in and they're taking the place of a guy who's going to be an all Big Ten middle linebacker in Dylan Rosiak and making it a very, very deep room so that Dylan can come back and not have to play in a game like this. So Illinois takes a lot from this, but at the end of the day, and I know this sounds like fandom-y, Mike, it's a really different juxtaposition to look at an Illinois team that maybe didn't play all that great, and they won by 38.
That's exactly what we talked about,
I don't think Tim Beckman's teams could not play great and win by 38. I don't think Lovie Smith's team.
I don't think Tim Beckman's team could play great and always win most of their games. I mean,
right. I don't think Lovie Smith's teams could not play great and win by 38. I don't think, there are a lot of coaches that have come through here and a lot of people who've built programs here where if Illinois played average or below average, they weren't blowing a team out. They weren't blowing a MAC team out. And I think this is the difference of what Brett Bielema has built. And I think it's just a different juxtaposition here in Champaign-Urbana that you can kind of come away thinking, boy, that didn't look great. And at the end of the day, you kind of just have to look to your right at the big scoreboard at Geese Memorial Stadium and go, oh, yeah, scoreboard. We won 38-0 if you're an Illini fan. And that's a different kind of feeling.
I struggle who's the more transformational figure at Illinois. Is it the hiring of Josh Whitman that triggered this whole thing to happen? Is it the hiring of Brett Bielema that nobody thought this team could ever be a Big Ten contender other than those miracle years that used to come out once every 20 or 25? Or is it Geese coming and dropping $100 million on the football program? So
yeah, I think it's B, because and to giving Josh credit, Josh had to go hire Brett Bielema.
Exactly.
Right.
And he was, if you recall, there were a few people, outliers, but most of us were all like, Brett Bielema? Really?
Well, there's a MAC title game that night where everybody thought Lance Leipold was going to be the next Illinois head coach.
And you look at what Bielema's done, and it's hard to argue that Josh Whitman wasn't the master puppeteer,
right?
Knowing exactly what to do.
Right. And so I'm not trying to give Josh no credit, because he had to go hire Brett Bielema. He had to go to Manhattan or go to New Jersey and interview Brett Bielema and hire him. Like, he had to have that forethought. But what Brett Bielema's done now that he's in his 5th season here at Illinois is damn impressive. And I don't think the reason I picked B quickly, Mike, is that Larry Geese said, like, I wrote this, but he said it. Larry Geese sat across the dinner table in 2017 when Josh Whitman was the AD and said, Josh, I'm never giving you a dime. I'm never giving the athletic department $1. I'll do everything I can to help you, but you're not getting any of my money. 8 years later, after Brett Bielema's built this football program up to being what it is, he gave $100 million. Now, Josh Whitman had been there before Brett Bielema. Brett Bielema had not been there before Brett Bielema, right? Like, I think what Brett Bielema has built in the football program allowed for Larry Geese to feel better about doing what he did with this 9-figure donation. And what I would tell you is that I do think that it takes the forethought of Josh Whitman to be able to hire Brett Bielema and give him the resources that he needs in order to have this happen. But it's also upon Brett Bielema to do what he's doing, which is build a football program, as we've been talking about, that can play below average on a Saturday night and beat a pretty darn good MAC team that I think is going to be a pretty darn good MAC team by 38. That's what happened tonight because of what that man has built. I give everybody in Byfeld Building, I give everybody in the Smith Center all the credit in the world to what they've done to build it up so that Larry Geese feels really good about giving a 9-figure gift. That's the way I'll put it. But I do think it has more to do with Brett Bielema and what he's done for the better part of 5 years, because let's all remember, I think we can all agree, Josh Whitman whiffed on the first football hire. Now, he rebounded and went through the process and did an excellent job of finding Brett Bielema and knowing that he was the guy that Illinois had to have. But I do think Brett Bielema and his relationship with Larry Geese allows for that to happen. I think he's the most important person right now with what's going on with Illinois athletics, and that includes what's going on that includes the guy that runs the operation across the street and Brad Underwood, because right now you're seeing, a sellout crowd for a Western Michigan game.
Yeah, I agree. That's you got to go back to 1983 for that type of stuff.
That's all Brett Bielema.
Yeah, and I will say one thing. I know exactly what Josh Whitman was trying to do with Lovie Smith.
I do too.
And I think he also helped Illinois maybe slay a few mythical dragons that maybe weren't really there, but people thought they were. And by having Lovie Smith, that was also done. So I totally give him a pass on that. And the other part is Lovie Smith had some players there that when you get a developmental coach like Brett Bielema and the guys he hires, the raw materials were there. The talent was there that with the right coaching staff, it could excel. And again, if I'm a young high school player and I'm looking at going to school A versus Illinois, I'm going to look at what Illinois does with lower ranked guys. And I'm like, okay, what would they do with higher ranked guys if I was one of those? And the other thing I would look at is when you get guys that people never heard of. I mean, I remember Kirby Joseph when he started playing safety, and we're like, oh my gosh, this guy's phenomenal. And it's like, where was he last year?
Because he was playing wide receiver.
Exactly. Right. And so when I see a coaching staff who can do that, pull a rabbit out of a hat and get the guy who's now the highest paid safety in the NFL, I got to be honest with you. I'm shocked that I would think that I'm improving my chances of playing in the NFL if I have talent, which I don't. But I think I'm playing for Bielema and the guys that he hires is going to improve my chances to play in the NFL.
You perfectly exemplified the argument I've been making for a long time, which is, look, 90% of people don't feel this way, and I get it. I respect your opinion, but this is how I'm always going to feel. Lovie Smith built the spine of what you're seeing now because he knew what a good football player looked like. He knew that Jake Hansen was a good football player. He knew that Sidney and Chase Brown were good football players. He knew that Josh Kreutz was a good football player. He knew that Pat Bryant was a good football player. But Lovie Smith what Lovie Smith did not understand was that the college game is so drastically different than the NFL game, and how you able to develop players, how you coach players, how you run an operation. It's just drastically different. It's unbelievably drastically different. And Brett Bielema knows how to run a college organization. He absolutely does. And he knows how to develop those types of players. Like, he knew how to develop a Jake Hansen. He knew how to develop an Owen Carney. He knew how to develop a Johnny Newton. He knew how to develop, a Keith Randolph. Knew how to develop all of those types of players. Lovie Smith gave you the spine, but couldn't get you to the next step. not only could Brett Bielema get you to the next step, he probably could get you to the next 5 steps, which is what he's done at Illinois.
You know, what Larry Gies has done is kind of thrown my challenge back in my face. Because remember, I've said for years, what could Brett Bielema do if he was funded like Ryan Day? Now, let's face it, Illinois is never going to be funded like that machine. But we're going to see what Brett Bielema can do with a little bit of help. And I think the football world is going to be relative. Well, I guess they would have been shocked had they not seen what last year looked like. And I think people I think people underestimate him. And to me, after he and I talked again before the season, you can get that in Eye on the Illini. I think that time with Bill Belichick, coupled with the maturity that Brett Bielema had, and some of he understood the struggle to get a job back after a rough time at Arkansas, and he worked for Bill Belichick. I think he had a little bit of I need to learn a few things. I've coached teams for years, and I'm really good, because he was. But I think he went in there, and I think he picked up some very important things from Mr. Belichick. But he had the college, environment, and he understands how to do it. I think we're also going to find out that Bill Belichick is going to find that there are very few guys who can win in both of these, even including, the greatest college coach of all time, Nick Saban, got drummed out of the NFL pretty fast. And we may find that the greatest head coach in the NFL may get drummed out of college really fast, which is ironic that now you're down to Jimmy Johnson and Pete Carroll and a few others who were good in both universes.
I think Josh Whitman found the right guy, and I think Brett Bielema found the right fit. I've talked to a lot of Brett Bielema's assistant coaches that realize this is where he should have been in the first place. Like, Arkansas was not the best fit for him. The SEC, I know why he wanted to do it. I know why he wanted to make the move. I know why he wanted to do that. It wasn't the best fit for Brett Bielema. It just wasn't, flat out. This is a good fit for him. I think that he found the right fit. I think Josh Whitman found the right coach. And I think that everything's working out to the point in which you have a head coach that is leading by 10 points going into halftime, pitching a shutout, and is, excuse my language, but pissed off, like going into the locker room and let everybody know I'm pissed off because, I think sometimes the family thing goes a little too far, but like he was treating them like he was their kids. Like, I'm disappointed in the way that you just played for 30 minutes. You can do better than that. Why aren't you doing better than that? And that also, went to his coaches. He went to Barry Lunny and said, look, you need to do better in the second half. Like, you got to do better. And had it out with Barry on a lot of different calls. And he was like, why'd you call? That's just dumb. Like, and he can have that conversation with Barry because he's worked with him for so long. And then you have a second half where, the first 3 drives are touchdown. Last I checked, you can't do any better than that. So Barry Lunny goes into half, figures his stuff out, and goes, okay, let's do this. And I think that, again, a fish, smells from the head, Mike. I think that everything that Brett Bielema does when he builds a program allows for his coaches to make those types of changes. So I think you're seeing a real operation here at Illinois. And that's why in a game where, look, I'm going to do grades. Okay. The overall grade is probably going to be the best grade because the specific grades and positional grades probably aren't going to be that great, but you add it all up and then you go, hey, 38-0.
Yeah.
And I've had this conversation with Larry, Mike, is that when it was week 1 where he goes, Matt, your grades for rushing offense and passing defense and rushing defense, none of them are as good as the overall grade. And I said, Larry, 52-3. That's why the overall grade is what it is. Like, guys, you're going to see the same thing with these grades. Like, rushing offense wasn't great because it wasn't great in the first half. Passing offense wasn't great because it wasn't great in the first half. Passing defense had some breakdowns in the first half. That's why Western Michigan, those last 2 drives, were able to basically walk the ball almost all the way down the field. But then you get to the overall grade and you go, 38-0. That's probably an A-. And there probably isn't going to be a category grade that's going to get anywhere near an A-, but that's how this works out. And again, I think what a different juxtaposition for you, Mike, as a fan, and for everybody else as a fan, And for me as a media member, when I started this in 2019, to look at an Illini team and go, well, that wasn't great, and they won by 38 and pitched a shutout.
Exactly.
Like, you know, that's kind of the summary of this, right? Is that like Illinois can definitely play better than this, but it's almost good that they didn't, because why would you want to play perfect against Western Michigan and then think that you're something that you're probably not before you go to Bloomington? I don't think these guys are going to be having a really, really high ego when they come in for film review tomorrow and when they go to practice this week, because we got stuff we got to get figured out. And I think that's the best thing that probably could have happened for Illinois. And the next best thing is you pitched a shutout and you beat a MAC team pretty handedly.
Yep. So that's the perfect place to end it, folks. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to the Illini Guys YouTube channel. Give us a like. We appreciate that. And of course, IlliniGuys.com, you can get into all the stuff behind the paywall, including the message board where you can actually talk direct with Matt, Ked, Brad, Larry, myself. It's not a passive situation. You get a chance to really get involved, and we try to make it a place that's fun. It's a great community of Illini fans. Please feel like you can come over there. $99 a year, and of course those dollars help us cover this geographically huge Big Ten, as you got to get Matt or others out to games, and those transportation and hotel costs do add up. So folks, until next time, of course, go Illini.
We saw a lot of social media with Coach Underwood and some high-profile recruit. Give us a little idea of any nuggets you might have heard.
Yeah, interesting. I think the biggest thing that man for man, talking to many members of the coaching staff, it was they expect the 5 for 5 rule to pass, which is going to give every guy 5 years of eligibility, which would really change the landscape of college basketball and also change the way they're recruiting for 2026, because every player currently on the roster would be eligible to return except for Ben Hummerkaus. So that would include like a Kylan Boswell. That's kind of big. That would be really big. And obviously you're going to have guys. I mean, Stojakovic could be a guy that ends up in the NBA. I mean, if he has a great year. So there's a lot of that as well. Maybe Tomislav also, whoever. But so I think that's intriguing. But the guys who stood out to me, but I also know that a kid like Cameron Holmes, who is a legit 5-star kid, definitely he's the kind of guy you take regardless, because you can get him out on the floor. Yeah, actually, Holmes told me that Underwood, when he was meeting with him one-on-one, he told him that he compared him to Terrence Shannon with his in-net speed and explosive. Holmes said he loves Terrence Shannon, so that's the big thing. Jackson Davis, he had a great quote. He said, "College coaches get fired when they lose, so I want them to know I'm a winner." That was great. Keller Daughtry is a kid that's kind of under the radar, 6'9" shooting guard kid. Had a little piece on him. I'll have more on him too, as well. So I think it's really cool to get those guys, young guys who are kind of new to the recruiting process on campus. Also, Riverside Brookfield guard was there as well, and he's just he's just a baby, 2028, but got a lot of potential. We'll see how that goes. Sinwan Han was the big kid. He was hilarious because when you put the camera on him, his English was bad. Couldn't speak English, had to have a translator, but when he was just talking, he was fine. So you can tell he didn't want to do the interview. So there you go. Also, Stojakovic is moving fine, walking fine. Doesn't look like he has anything wrong. Ty Rogers has a little bit of a limp to him. He has a scar right down the top of his knee, which is just like you would have if you had the ACL surgery. You can read into that what you want.